Bella and Jake had been together for 3 years. Although their bond often seemed more physical than emotional. While Bella longed for marriage and children, Jake wasn't sure. She'd grown up lavishly, spending her parents' money on designer clothes and weekend getaways. Jake, in contrast, was deeply immersed in his father's business. He found Bella's carefree habits off-putting, though her sensuality kept him hooked in bed. One night, after a friend's birthday party, they stumbled into her apartment, both tipsy from too many cocktails. Bella nearly tore off her tight red dress, eager to quench the desire in Jake's lustful eyes. They toppled onto her bed in a heated embrace, moaning into each other's skin. Bella pressed herself closer until they reached a frenzied climax. Bodies covered in sweat, her hair splayed across the pillows. Moments later, as the excitement faded, Bella brought up a sensitive topic again. "Aren't you tired of this? You and me, year after year. Don't you think it's time for marriage?" Jake, breathless, slid off the bed and disappeared into the shower. The last thing he wanted was to talk about weddings. "I told you," he called out over the running water. "I'm not ready. My dad's business is a handful. Why not focus on something besides rings and kids?" Disappointment clouded Bella's face. She was a woman used to getting what she wanted. But no matter how many times she pressed the subject, Jake's answer stayed the same. Later. Not now. Jake lived in a spacious family home. His father traveled often, while his mother had taken a long vacation abroad. His two younger siblings attended a private school, leaving Jake as the de facto man of the house, though he often felt alone in its echoing corridors. The staff included a longtime nanny, Miss Fay, and a new hire named Sylvia. Sylvia's presence would soon change his life in ways he never anticipated. Sylvia arrived quietly on a Monday morning, following a funeral for her ailing mother. Because of mounting debts and medical bills, she needed stable work. A family acquaintance had suggested her for Jake's household. She was petite, wore no makeup, and had modest clothing that betrayed her lack of means. Yet she carried a determined, independent air. At dawn, Sylvia was shown her small bedroom. She had no time to settle in before Miss Fay said, "Mr. Jake might want something for breakfast. Have a quick look around the kitchen." "Dear." Sylvia nodded, but her mind reeled. She hardly knew her way around. Meanwhile, upstairs, Jake woke with a splitting headache from partying with Bella. He trudged downstairs in a bathrobe, half awake, only to find a strange young woman in the kitchen. "Who are you?" he demanded, scanning her from head to toe. "Good morning, sir," she said, her voice quiet. "I'm Sylvia, the new helper." He studied her features. No fancy lipstick, no elaborate hairstyle. She looked entirely unassuming. "Fine. Get me a pitcher of ice-cold water upstairs," he barked, turning on his heel. Though perplexed, Sylvia complied. Moments later, she carried water up the grand staircase, arms trembling as she balanced the pitcher. She reached his door and knocked. It swung open to reveal Jake in rumpled boxers, half-lidded eyes. "Set it on the table," he muttered. "Now pick up my dirty clothes and make my bed." Sylvia noticed his clothes strewn across the floor. Why is he so rude, she thought, but she kept her composure. Tidying swiftly, Jake flopped onto the sofa, ignoring her. When she was done, he added, "And once you're finished, tell Miss Fay to prepare me breakfast. Then bring it here." She left, quietly exhaling. This was not how she envisioned day one. It didn't end there. Next, Jake ordered Sylvia to dust his personal office, an attic-like area piled with books, papers, and a small desk. The narrow staircase up to the attic made her legs ache. She coughed at the thick dust swirling in the stale air. She spent hours wiping down old textbooks, discarding stray scraps of paper, and reorganizing corners filled with random knickknacks. Eventually, her muscles screamed for rest. Just 5 minutes, she told herself. Behind a towering bookshelf, she sat on a stool and dozed off. A sudden noise from below startled her awake. She quickly resumed dusting, embarrassed she'd fallen asleep, but footsteps never approached, so she guessed it was just a door closing. She had no idea how drastically her life was about to be disrupted by Jake and the company he kept. Later that day, Bella turned up wearing a figure-hugging outfit, craving Jake's attention. Despite claiming he was busy, Jake couldn't resist. They retreated to his office for privacy. Bella slid onto his lap, hands roving under his shirt. Jake hoisted her hips. Their mouths met in a voracious kiss, each moan echoing against the dusty attic walls. Bella's top parted, revealing pale skin, and Jake buried his face into her neck, hooking a leg around his waist. They were so absorbed that neither realized Sylvia, newly awake from her break, was on the far side of the shelves. Emerging from behind the bookcase, Sylvia froze in shock. Jake glimpsed her wide eyes. Horrified, he jerked Bella away, who tumbled onto the carpet with a curse. "What the?" Bella sputtered, straightening her clothes. Jake's face burned with embarrassment. "Damn it," he thought. He roared at Sylvia. "What are you doing here? Get out." Sylvia fled, her cheeks blazing. Bella, furious at the interruption, picked up her purse and shot a glare at Sylvia's retreating form. Asterisk, "Who is that girl?" Asterisk, Bella hissed, yanking her outfit back into place. Jake half shrugged. Asterisk, "Just a new helper. Let's call this off for now. I have work." Asterisk. Bella pouted but grabbed her handbag to leave, passing Sylvia on the stairs. "If you ever ruin my day again," Bella said icily, "you'll regret it." Sylvia gulped. I'm sorry, ma'am," she whispered. After Bella's stormy departure, Jake demanded coffee. Sylvia rushed to bring a steaming mug but struggled climbing the attic steps again. By the time she arrived, the coffee had cooled. Jake tasted it, spat it out angrily. "This is lukewarm. Couldn't you move faster?" Sylvia apologized, explaining the trip upstairs. Jake fumed. "Get a thermos. Do it here in my office. No more excuses." The day ended in frustration for both. As Sylvia collapsed into bed that night, she wondered how long she could endure his short temper. Meanwhile, Jake stewed with guilt. Part of him hated snapping at her, but he felt restless from his big family business responsibilities and Bella's demands. One afternoon, Sylvia was helping Jake's teenage sister, Mary, rehearse lines for a school play. They practiced by the pool, Mary playing a tragic heroine, and Sylvia reading the part of the fickle suitor. Overcome by emotion, Mary rushed at Sylvia in character, and Sylvia, stepping back in alarm, slipped into the deep end. She flailed. Asterisk, she couldn't swim. Asterisk, panicked. Mary screamed for help, frozen in place as she tried to remove her costume. Jake, hearing the cries, dashed outside, spotting Sylvia sinking below the surface. He dove in fully clothed. He grasped her around the waist, dragging her upward. Once they breached the surface, he lugged her onto the deck. She lay there motionless, water streaming from her mouth. Alarmed, Jake tilted her head, administered rescue breaths, then pressed on her chest. At last, Sylvia coughed and spat up water. Gasping for breath, he turned her onto her side, massaging her back. "Hey, are you okay?" he said, voice trembling. She nodded, eyes wet with fear. "Next time, be more careful," he scolded gently. Mary apologized tearfully. "I'm so sorry. I never meant for you to fall in." Shivering and exhausted, Sylvia mumbled a thank you to Jake. She never expected him, usually so cold, to save her life. Not long after the pool incident, Bella insisted on dragging Jake and Sylvia to a friend's party. "Frank's having a birthday. Join me," she urged. "And bring Sylvia. Frank's single. Might be perfect for her." Sylvia had zero interest, but Bella's persuasion was relentless, and Jake merely shrugged. Asterisk, "Don't be difficult." Asterisk, he told Sylvia. So she gave in. At the upscale venue, Frank greeted them with cocktails and an extravagant spread. Bella introduced Sylvia as "my boyfriend's maid," adding that Frank might like to meet her. Sylvia politely smiled but felt uneasy. Throughout the night, Bella drank heavily, ignoring Jake's attempts to moderate her intake. Frank poured Sylvia a glass of wine, telling her it was mild. She ended up gulping more than she intended. Jake watched as Sylvia's cheeks reddened, her eyes becoming glossy. Meanwhile, Bella cozied up to Frank at times, fueling Jake's suspicion. Tired of the phony atmosphere, Jake decided they'd had enough. He guided Bella, who was stumbling, back to his car. Tony, the driver, helped Sylvia, who was slurring. Once they dropped Bella at her apartment, Jake overheard her phone ringing. A man's voice said, "Tomorrow, 3 p.m., Atoria Hotel, don't forget." Bella had lied again about her plans. Seething, Jake returned to the car. Sylvia was passed out, so he carried her to her bedroom at the mansion. She half woke, murmuring nonsense. He felt strangely protective, noticing how vulnerable she was. Jake confirmed Bella's betrayal the next afternoon, witnessing her meet Frank at the Atoria Hotel. Enraged and disillusioned, he drove home, ignoring Bella's calls. He found Sylvia in the living room, watering a potted plant. She glimpsed the fury in his eyes. He strode past her, fists clenched, and locked himself in his room. Miss Fay, alarmed, told Sylvia to bring him peanuts and beer. Entering Jake's bedroom, Sylvia saw items strewn about. He'd clearly taken out his anger on the furniture. He confessed through gritted teeth. Bella was sleeping with Frank behind my back. She lied for months. I ended it, but I feel so lost. Sympathy welled in Sylvia's heart. "I'm sorry," she said softly, setting the tray down. "You gave her everything you could, right? Sometimes we don't realize the people we trust can betray us so easily." Jake sank onto the sofa. Opening a beer can, he invited Sylvia to sit, offering her a can too. Though she rarely drank, she accepted. For an hour, they talked. He unburdened himself about Bella's deception, how he questioned his own judgment for not seeing her true colors. Sylvia listened, offering gentle reassurance. Asterisk, maybe there's someone better for you. Asterisk, she told him. As the drinks piled up, their walls crumbled. Jake admitted he'd lost interest in Bella long ago, except for physical desire. "That's not how I want to live," he said. "I want something real." Sylvia nodded. "You deserve that." Eventually, they both teetered on tipsiness. Jake sat on the sofa, pulling Sylvia beside him. Her eyes drooped. She tried to stand, but her foot wobbled, sending her tumbling into his lap. Their faces were inches apart. The air crackled with tension. Without thinking, Jake leaned in and kissed her. Sylvia's heart pounded, yet she kissed him back, nerves blazing. This was no forced scenario, just an unguarded moment between two wounded souls. Sunlight broke across Jake's face as he stirred in bed. Disoriented, he realized the sheets bore a deep red stain. Sylvia's virgin blood. Panicking, he discovered she was gone. Bolting up, he dashed to Miss Fay, who said Sylvia left with bags. Refusing to wait, he caught up to her outside, seizing her wrist. "Where do you think you're going?" "I'm leaving," she choked out. "What happened last night was a mistake. I can't be your rebound." Jake's pulse thundered. "Don't say it was meaningless. I wanted you. We were drunk, and you're fresh from heartbreak." Sylvia insisted. "Don't do this to me." He pulled her closer, pressing his lips to hers in a desperate attempt to make her stay. She froze, tears escaping. Eventually, she yielded, letting the kiss linger. "You're not a rebound," Jake said, voice shaking. "Give me time to prove it. Stay." Sylvia was torn. She felt something for him but worried about his sincerity. Still, she eventually agreed to remain, but only on the condition that Jake not push for intimacy until they were sure of their feelings. He promised. Over the next 3 months, Jake avoided Bella altogether, ignoring her phone calls. Rumors about Bella and Frank traveling abroad soon surfaced, confirming she'd moved on. Meanwhile, Jake focused on spending genuine time with Sylvia. They discovered shared tastes, quiet corners for reading, Sunday morning coffee in the veranda. Sylvia taught him simple joys, how to appreciate the sunrise without a phone in hand. He introduced her to local restaurants, guiding her through unfamiliar menus. His mother returned from overseas to find her eldest son rumored to be dating the new helper. Initially wary, she noticed how comfortable they seemed. Sylvia, though shy, spoke politely, even offering to help with family dinners. Slowly, His mother's disapproval softened. She saw that Jake's temper had mellowed. He was more patient, more content, no longer snapping at the staff. Jake told his parents, "I know you might not like this, but I'm serious about Sylvia." His father, busy with expansions in the family business, was indifferent as long as Jake was happy. His mother asked Sylvia about her family, learning she'd lost her mother and had no father in the picture. Miss Fay vouched for Sylvia's diligence. In time, the household accepted her. One Friday, Jake and Sylvia took a day trip to a private beach resort. He claimed it was just for relaxation, but upon arriving, he led her to a small bamboo raft anchored near the shore. It was decorated with woven mats, scattered rose petals, and a modest dinner for two. The ocean breeze was mild, the horizon drenched in golden sunlight. "What's going on, Jake?" she asked, heart fluttering at the romantic setup. Without a word, he kneeled, pulling out a ring from his pocket. He said, "Sylvia, I love you. Will you marry me?" Tears welled in her eyes. All the heartbreak, confusion, and close calls from the past flashed in her mind. She exhaled shakily. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you." He slid the ring onto her finger. She couldn't believe a woman of her standing would become the fiancée of such a wealthy man. But the sincerity in Jake's gaze told her everything. He lifted her chin and kissed her softly. The raft gently rocked beneath them, waves lapping against the bamboo. She curled her arms around his neck, returning his affection. "I promise," Jake murmured. "I'll be the partner you deserve. I'll never let you go." Laughing through tears, Sylvia teased, "Just promise not to make me climb too many stairs or vacuum your dusty attic again." Jake pulled her close, resting his cheek against her hair. "I can't promise I won't be messy sometimes, but I can promise we'll figure it out together." They shared dinner on the raft, each bite accompanied by giggles and dreamy sighs. As dusk settled, they gazed at the starlit sky, no longer boss and helper, but partners. Jake reached for her hand, feeling the cool ring on her finger, a silent reminder of how far they'd come. For a moment, they recalled their uncertain start, the arguments, the humiliating glimpses of Bella, the near drowning. Now, they were forging a new path. Jake told his mother about the proposal. She was stunned but saw how determined he was. "If she makes you happy, you have our blessing," she finally said, hugging her son. Miss Fay joked that the attic would never again be dusty since Sylvia had all the motivation to keep it in shape. Sylvia wrote to her relatives in the province, excited to share the big news. They responded with cautious optimism. Asterisk, "Don't let them treat you unfairly, child." Asterisk, an aunt warned, but eventually congratulated her. Bella, upon hearing the news through the grapevine, sent no message. It was rumored she was set on a lavish life with Frank, traveling to new business ventures. Jake felt no bitterness left, only relief. The wedding preparations were modest by high society standards. Sylvia didn't want extravagance. She insisted on a simple church ceremony with close friends and the household staff as guests. Jake agreed wholeheartedly. On the morning of the wedding, Miss Fay helped Sylvia slip into a classic white gown. Jake waited at the altar, wearing a crisp suit, nerves dancing in his stomach. As Sylvia walked down the aisle, he was struck by her radiant smile, a far cry from that fearful young maid he'd once barked orders at. They exchanged vows, rings glinting under the chapel lights. "I pledge to love, honor, and be patient with you always," Sylvia said, voice cracking with emotion. "I promise to protect you, cherish you, and never forget how we found each other," Jake replied, tears in his eyes. They sealed it with a tender kiss, stepping outside into the sunshine, hand in hand. Applause rang out from Miss Fay, Jake's siblings, and even a few old friends. The new couple felt a wave of gratitude for how fate had unfolded. As they left for a short honeymoon on that very beach resort where he proposed, Jake teased, "So, you'll vacuum our future house, but I'll handle the coffee to make sure it's never cold?" Sylvia laughed, leaning on his arm. "Deal. Just remember how to do rescue breathing if I fall into a pool again." Their laughter echoed under the bright sky, a promise that even if storms came, They would face them side by side, no longer boss and maid, but a family built on love, understanding, and hard-won trust.